growing garlic in your garden or balcony, what should you pay attention to? Do you have a leftover garlic clove or has a clove already started sprouting? Then plant that clove somewhere in your garden, preferably in a sunny spot. When do you plant garlic in your garden or on a balcony? You can plant garlic cloves almost any time, as long as the soil isn't frozen. But when you can harvest and how quickly you see a plant grow from the clove depends on the moment you planted it and the location where you planted it. Why don't you see any plants growing from the garlic cloves yet? That depends on when you put the cloves in the ground and where. I once planted garlic in 2 different spots in my garden to find out which location was best. These cloves were planted in a place with less sunlight in winter, but in summer the sun shines there for at least 4 hours. Within a few weeks, even before the end of the month, I already saw the garlic plants coming up. You should know that I planted here at the beginning of October, which is an ideal time to plant, with very good results. But in the same year I planted in February in a shady spot. In summer this area is full of the neighbors' plants, but it gets less sun, while their plants are bare in winter and more sun reaches the ground then. Only a full year later in February, I suddenly saw the garlic plant coming up. By then I had completely forgotten that I had put a clove in the ground here. So I don't plant cloves here anymore, because the harvest is very poor. I get small bulbs with small cloves. If you plant just before it starts freezing, you will only see growth later in winter, when temperatures begin to rise again. Here I planted in November. Only 2 months later, when the soil was no longer frozen, I saw growth. You can also clearly see that the plants in the front grow faster than the ones in the back, apparently because the front area gets earlier and therefore more sunlight in winter. Why do I see multiple plants growing from one clove? There are 2 types of garlic. If you suddenly see many plants growing from one clove, you likely planted a softneck variety. Several garlic plants are now growing from that one clove. Dig them up, gently separate them, and plant each one in its own spot with enough space around it. About 10 to 15 centimeters between the plants is enough. Why is this strange stem growing? This is a hardneck variety. This is how you recognize the difference between softneck and hardneck garlic. You cut off this flower stalk so no energy is wasted on flowering. Don't throw it away, it's delicious for cooking, for example in a stir fry. When can I harvest? If you planted the cloves at the beginning of October, then in June and July you can start checking when to harvest. When you see the bottom 3 leaves turn brown, you can harvest. If you're unsure, dig up the front one to see what the bulb looks like. Why are my bulbs smaller than other people's? This can have several causes. The hardneck variety, the one that produces a flower stalk, forms larger bulbs and cloves, but only if it has had enough cold days in winter. The colder, the better. The softneck variety is much easier to grow and doesn't depend on cold, but it produces smaller bulbs. If you feed the garlic plants with potassium, it helps the bulbs develop in the soil. But I must say that giving the plants enough space, weeding, and having enough cold days for hardneck varieties results in larger bulbs than just feeding with potassium alone. 2 weeks after feeding with potassium, you can add a layer of compost between the plants. This also helps very well with plant development and provides nutrients at the same time. Why is there no skin around my garlic bulb anymore? I probably waited too long to harvest, causing the bulb to lose their protective layer. I will use these bulbs first because they can no longer be stored for later in the year. If your bulbs look like this, it's very possible that your soil has been too wet for a long period. This was the year when it rained extremely much and the slug infestation was at its worst. The garlic harvest depends heavily on the weather, so don't give up if the harvest is disappointing the first time. At least the slugs won't ruin your garlic as quickly as they do with other vegetable garden plants. Subscribe to my channel if you want more information and tips about growing your own food in your garden.